I think Rishi Sunak has just resigned. I'm just getting this through on my phone, a tweet here from Rishi Sunak saying, the Chancellor saying the public rightly expect government to be conducted properly, competently and seriously. I recognise this may be my last ministerial job, but I believe these standards are worth fighting for. This is why I am resigning. So the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, has now resigned. Boris Johnson is now lost two very, very integral cabinet ministers. Questions now about whether this is the moment that the cabinet decide enough is enough. This has been up for discussion for a number of weeks, with colleagues increasingly calling on cabinet ministers to resign, to stand up to Boris Johnson. Rishi Sunak, there is his letter. Let me just see if I can pull it up. I saw it's on my phone and it's in tiny font. Let me see if I can get that letter for you. I've got it here. Let me read some of it to you. You can see it on your screen. Rishi Sunak saying, "It's with deep sadness I'm writing to you to resign from the government. It's been an enormous privilege to serve our country as Chancellor of the Exchequer, and I will always be proud of how, during the pandemic, we protected people's jobs." He says, "To leave ministerial office is a serious matter for me. For me to step down as Chancellor while the world is suffering the economic consequences of the pandemic is not a decision I have taken lightly." He says, however, the public rightly expect government to be conducted properly, competently and seriously. I recognise this might be my last ministerial job. I believe these standards are worth fighting for. That is why I am resigning. Rishi Sunak, the now former Chancellor, goes on, "I have been loyal to you. I backed you to become leader of our party. I respected the powerful mandate given to you by the British people." He goes on to say, "I've always tried to compromise in order to deliver the things you want to achieve." But he then says, "I firmly believe the public are ready to hear that truth about making difficult decisions. People know if something's not good, too good to be true, it's not true. They need to know that whilst there's a path to a better future, it's not an easy one." He says, "I am sad to be leaving government, but I have reluctantly come to the conclusion that we cannot continue like this." So it started with Oliver Dowden, the chair of the party, a close ally of Rishi Sunak. He resigned after those two by-election defeats last week. Then there was a question about whether or not other cabinet ministers would resign, and we took soundings. No one seemed ready to jump, but it seems now that this Chris Pincher scandal, the debacle around that, the fact that the Prime Minister is now apologising and saying he's made a mistake, has led some cabinet ministers to believe that it's time for change, that they can't in good conscience carry on in Boris Johnson's government. And that is absolutely a double blow to Boris Johnson. He's lost his Chancellor and he's lost his Health Secretary and he has lost his party chair. Now there are questions about whether more cabinet ministers will resign and whether the Prime Minister could be forced out by a cabinet no longer willing to support him. Could this now be the beginning of the end for Boris Johnson? This is very, very grave for him indeed.
Well, it clearly is very grave for him. And the question is, can he survive the resignation of his Health Secretary, but more particularly the resignation of his Chancellor during a cost of living crisis? Can he survive that? That is the big question. And many people will say that you know, his days are numbered now.
Well, Mark, I think the big discussion within the Conservative Party and with MPs was there was an attempt to force him out by that confidence vote, and he won the vote, and no one in Cabinet resigned, and he continued on. And then it became a question with some of those rebels that wanted him to leave, to resign. that there was an acknowledgement that they had done what they could do on the backbenches to try and unseat Boris Johnson. But what they then needed was some people in cabinet to step up and say enough is enough and resign from cabinet and destabilise the Prime Minister. And that is what we are now seeing happening in real time. To lose your Chancellor and your Health Secretary, two of the most important jobs. I mean, the Chancellor of the Exchequer is the second most important job in government. Boris Johnson is looking extremely vulnerable now. And the big question, as Sam was saying, is will more cabinet ministers follow? Will this be an exodus